Spinning and we're spinning and we're spinning.
Live.
Hi, and we're live. Yay! Oh. Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. We hope that everyone is doing well and is safe and enjoying this rainy day. Hopefully it pushes away all the pollen. This is what I'm keeping my fingers crossed. This is the 15th edition. Am I right, Jolene? I think 15th.
I don't know. I've lost track.
I know. This is like, Zoom day edition of At Home with.
Yeah.
Tanya area. Oh, there I am. Oh my goodness, I blinked. Moment in time. I'm a mom of two, and I'm with my lovely co-host today.
Hello, I'm Jolene Moore from Main Street Home Loans. So we're a local lender here helping clients with refinancing and purchasing homes. So a pleasure to be here today. So I have to warn you, I might have some internet issues. So if I do, I'll come right back if I have any. Okay. So
no worries. It's the rain. We're all tired.
Yeah. Well, we have someone working on something and I'm trying to get to my phone and all that kind. I was going to get to my office, but anyway, here I am, and we're going
to roll.
Yes, exactly.
It always makes me so happy on Tuesdays and Thursdays to see your face. So you know what?
Me too.
That's what we're just going to see. So we have a fantastic guest today. Dr. Shruti Tiwari is a friend and child psychiatrist. She is, oh my gosh, like her bio is phenomenal. So I am not going to mess this up, and forgive me for kind of paraphrasing this as well. I know, don't, because you're so well educated. Okay.
Lies,
anyway,
lies.
So it's all lies. She is a Northern Virginia native, just like I am. She graduated from Thomas Jefferson High School. I did not, by the way. And she went to UVA, stayed within Virginia, and then went to Eastern Virginia Medical School and did her adult psychology psych residency in Philadelphia. She continued her fellowship at Children's National Medical Center in Washington, D.C., which, Shruti, I don't think you know, but I also have a connection to them too. So we're not going to get off onto a tangent yet, but my older daughter, when she was 3, had a brain tumor. And her doctor was Dr. Maceros, who is one of the neurosurgeons at Children's Medical. Yep. We still love that school. Sorry, going back to script here. So she's been working at the Inova Keller Center since then with children and adolescents. And that's one of the reasons why I am so thankful that you are on with us today, because I think, we talked one of the earlier episodes we had was with a phenomenal Dr. Grace Hipona, I think. Am I saying her last name right, Jolene?
Yes.
Therapist. And she really enlightened us in terms of kind of some of the phases of what we were feeling with quarantine and stuff. But I think it's important to talk about kids and how our kids are feeling. I know I've seen it in different ways. But then the other thing that occurred to me is how our kids are going to enter into summer. And summer for them is this kind of joyous period of being able to do fun things and going to camps and being with friends and pools and stuff, and it's going to feel very different this summer. So I thought that would be a great topic to talk about with you today as well. So all of that is to say is that thank you so much for joining us.
Sure. No, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yes. Shruti and I haven't seen each other in quite a long time, other than maybe on Facebook posts and stuff, so this is also fun.
No, it is.
So really quickly, before we get into like some of the things that I just mentioned, but explain to us a little bit about your practice, and then some of the children that you see, and how that has been all happening and occurring during, since the stay-at-home orders and quarantine and COVID.
Sure. So I work at I would call it like a group practice, but it's under the wing of a broader hospital organization called Inova, which you guys are all familiar with in this area. And basically my role in that job is as a medication management provider. And so I'm trained in psychiatry, which is medication and therapy. So there's a lot of that, the mix of that happens in our appointments, but that is my primary role. And so, I've been doing this here for 11 years in the same community that I grew up in. And it's interesting to see kind of the changes that have taken place in Northern Virginia since I was a high schooler here, and how different it is for kids going through that same experience now with just everything, just the way that the world is now. And this is definitely an interesting time for all of us. I mean, I think it's a hard time. It's a tiring time. And so when all of this first started, we moved pretty quickly to a telehealth model, like many other physicians, and especially in the field of mental health. I think a lot of people moved to that model primarily because of safety, and wanting to do the right thing by our patients and our providers. And so that's been good. I mean, it's been really great to be able to continue to provide services to patients. It's hard. It's definitely not my preferred platform. And I think some people can do telehealth beautifully. I think it's really difficult to connect on the platform, if I'm being honest. But it's possible, right? And I think we make it happen and we make it work. But it is hard. You lose. I think we'll talk about this probably more when we talk about even our interactions in this way. If I was seeing you in person, I'd probably give you a big hug, right? And that's obviously not happening right now. But just you get to see this to this of me. And normally when I'm in a clinic setting with a patient, I get to see all of them. I get to see their body language. I get to see facial expressions. I get to see tone. And a lot of that gets lost because I'm seeing kids in their home environment where they're not in a challenging situation. I'm seeing kids that are really little that may need to play with toys in my office, and I can't do that. So it's a little challenging, but it's working out okay. And you asked what kinds of kids do I mean, I see all kids. I see kids from the ages of around 5 or 6 to 18. In terms of medication management, I don't typically medicate kids when they're very young, especially like that's why we have that limit of 5 or 6, because that's really when medications become approved for children by the FDA. But even then, I think a lot of times we have conversations about whether medication is really warranted. Is it needed? I think a lot of times there's a role for parents to have some training, and support during what they're going through. So it's a lot of that as well, along with the med piece.
So I know you mentioned you're doing, the telehealth. Has there any, because I know like the governor just announced things and things like, do you know when you guys might be going back to where you're doing face-to-face? Has that been announced or figured out yet at this point?
I think that's always, it's kind of like what we say when somebody gets admitted to the hospital, right? Like discharge planning starts the minute you walk into the hospital, because you're always thinking about what that person's going to need. I think that the minute this all started, we started planning for, hey, what's this going to look like? What are we going to need to have in place for us to reopen? I don't think that's in the plans right now at this moment. I think if from, whatever happens, it's going to be a phased in approach, right? Because that's the way we're going to have to do this as a society, is to phase things back in. It can't be all sudden and immediate, because from a safety standpoint, that's just not possible. And that's always the primary focus, is safety, always. So, I'm hoping that as things start opening up, that slowly services that are more critical with patients that are struggling more can go back to live, because there is a lot that you lose in telehealth, by just having everything be virtual, right? I mean, there's something about having teams in a room together that is palpable that you just can't replicate when you're over telehealth. So I think some of those things might get phased back in more quickly than something that I do, which is more one-on-one, where I can still build that connection over Zoom or, whatever.
Well, because we were just talking about, like, for our company, in the sense of, I think right now the governor's like, even if in your office, you're supposed to have a mask on. And most people, and like what you're saying, with meeting face to face with a client, if you both have to have masks on, you're also losing that facial, recognition and all that kind of stuff. So, so it's going to be an interesting transition, as we go forward and how this all is going to play out.
One of the things that's, Shruti, what I was just thinking of is when I was going through therapy, I felt comfortable in my therapist office. I felt like that was a space where I could share freely and and when I left there, so I mean, I can see like the huge kind of disconnect with telemedicine, especially when you're a child within their home, which should be a safe environment for them, but it might not be safe for them to express the way that they need to, or how, and I know that they don't recognize that, but that they can't express themselves how they need to. And then plus, like when I walked out of his office, just on my way home, I got to digest some of it, right? And so then I could go back into the world around me. And I know a child doesn't really think that way. They can't process that way yet, but I can imagine like what you're talking about with the whole telemedicine thing. All of that is wiped away. And you probably don't get to feel like you're meaningfully connecting with them.
It's amazing. I mean, I will say it's amazing how families rise to the occasion. So I've been really impressed with a lot of the kids that I work with in terms of their parents figuring out a format that can work even if it's not perfect. So being able to give them space and going all the way to the basement while they're talking, it's not the same. You're totally right. There's so much unspoken that we can't, I can't even explain everything in terms of, you brought up such a good point with having been in a therapist's office, and there are just little things. There are sometimes kids that turn towards a particular toy for comfort. Every single time they come in, there's like a gadget that they want to mess with because it allows them to be more free with their words, or there's just the comfort of being in the same consistent space. So one of the ways that we try to work through that is having that consistency at home. So like my environment at home, this isn't my typical office space at home, and I try to keep that look very consistent from week after week, so that if I'm seeing somebody every week or every month, they're not really seeing different parts of my life. You know what I mean? They're seeing the same space, so that there's a consistency there. And a lot of, I think the hardest thing is probably establishing new relationships. The kids that I've seen for years, it's a little bit of a shift, but the kids that I'm seeing for the first time, I've really been so impressed with how parents have been able to give them, honor their space, honor their privacy, and be able to give them that space, because it's so difficult. We're all sharing. I mean, we've had to minimize our lives into our homes, and so it's really difficult.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
That's a good point too. Like you think, I mean, it's not something that I've thought about, but like you're saying, having the same background to provide that same type of consistency for them. And I still do counseling. It's something I've always believed in, and I've been doing telecounseling with it. And it is different. It's definitely, but I do think, like you said, I think it's easier when you have the connection already in the relationship to continue it in that manner. I think doing it first time, like you were just saying, it could be different. And when you actually come together and see face to face, you're going to be like, whoa, who are you?
It's going to be weird. And for me too, I think kind of piggybacking off what you were just saying, for me too, as a clinician, right? And I think this could be generalized to what you guys are doing, to so many of us that are working from home. I feel so fortunate that I can have that space, because not all of my colleagues are able to have that. Because of their lives and their homes, they don't have the luxury of having a specific space that they can call theirs all the time.
Right.
And for me too, that's so, it's unbelievably helpful to finish my day. I do not go in that room all weekend once I'm done for the week. Like I leave that room at night, and it's almost like I'm leaving an office, because I don't go back in there until it's time for work the next day. And for me as a clinician, that helps me to compartmentalize that part of my life a little bit, which is a huge luxury,
Yeah.
That's
something we've talked about in here. Sorry, Tanya. Is that, being at home, you also can just end up sitting at your desk and working all day, because you're not coming and going, and so I found myself doing that for the first several weeks. And now I'm trying to walk in the morning, I'm trying to put things into place, because I think it's challenging to, like you said, to compartmentalize that, because you're all doing everything all in the same space and not going out, so that's a good point.
Yes. I mean, I certainly treated this, so my office, actually, we turned in the dining room years ago into because we needed a formal living room and a formal dining room. So I took the dining room as my office, and it's open. I walk through it almost every day, which is a constant reminder for me. And when, much like Jolene was talking about, I think even I probably did this with my children when we first got into stay at home and quarantine. I mean, I was like, it's a sprint. We're going to do everything and we're going to, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to work. And so now I have to say, like, I'm a little burnt. Like I kind of do have to compartmentalize it. And I think that's why over the weekend, I tried very hard not to work very much at all, because like I just needed space to not think about it. And I can imagine for a child that's going through virtual learning, thank goodness for many of them having that, but it has to be a similar feeing, right? Is that they can't get away from it at this point.
Yeah, because if you think about it, well, first of all, I mean, there's a change in space, right? Normally we have a space for school, there's a space for activities, there's a space for where we do clubs, and then we come home, and that's our time at home, and it's a place for us to decompress. And the same thing for us as adults. We go out and hang out with our friends, we have work, and then we're home. And now we're really having to compress that all into one area. And so a lot of what I hear too is I just don't like, there are times when I'm seeing families beautifully do this where there's a dance around space, so like parents will go to bed and a child will have access to, a teenage child will have access to technology or time with their friends for an extra hour because that's their space alone without their parents, because they just need physical space away too. And I have parents that sometimes ask me, is it okay if my child is spending a little more time in their room? Yeah. I mean, I think they are also craving time away from you just as much as we are craving time away from them. Yeah. And that's also okay, right? That's healthy. We normally do have that space and distance. You're not a bad parent. I remember, Tanya, I chuckled when you said I took the weekend off because you were emailing me on Monday and you're like, I'm so sorry that I took the weekend off. And I'm thinking, like, why is she apologizing? You deserve a weekend off, right? You should have a weekend off, and you probably need that to recharge. And so, giving yourself a little bit of grace is probably valuable in this time as well. And then the second thing is that I volunteer on this physician support line after hours where we like frontline providers can call in, and it's a support line. So we kind of just they're able to vent. And one of the things that's kind of off topic, one of the things that when we were preparing for this, we kind of had some not lectures, but discussions around what this was going to look like. And typically when there's some sort of disaster work in mental health, there's like an event. And even if you want to think about it, like in terms of a death of a loved one, right? There's the event, and then everybody rallies, and we're like, okay, we got to plan for this, and we got to do that, and everyone's kind of go, and that's what I'm hearing. At the very beginning, you were feeling like that, like, all right, I got to, figure out arts and crafts, and we're gonna bake and sourdough starters, and like
we're gonna learn.
Let's not lie. I'm gonna do
Chinese or something. Like
sourdough starter is still my nemesis, so it's gonna happen at some point. But there's this, so there's usually an event, it finishes, we mobilize, and then we sort of process. And the event is not over here. Like, we are still going through it. It is a constant, and there's constantly ever-changing information we're getting from the media. There's information that changes in terms of schools and what we're expected and what we're not expected to do. And so the messages that we're getting are just, it's if you want to think about it as a trauma, it's a constant trauma. And so that sprint, we run out of energy. And that's where I'm seeing a lot of people are now. They're just kind of tired and burned. Like you said, they're wiped out a little bit. And I think this is a marathon, but it's kind of a tough marathon. It's a really long marathon.
Yes.
That's a good point. Very, very good. One thing sorry.
No. Go, Jolene. You go.
No, you mentioned that you were, I know you said it's off topic, but it interested me. So you're saying you volunteer for, so it's for healthcare providers. Is that what you're saying, that they can call in after hours, kind of to help them kind of process what they may have experienced that day, or that type of thing, or what they're going through themselves? There's a group of 3 or 4 really awesome psychiatrists that started this for physicians on the front line, because I think what they were finding was that a lot of times, specifically physicians weren't reaching out because they would say, hey, like my nurses really need the support, or because we are a team in the hospital. There isn't an I or you, it's a we. And so a lot of physicians were really getting burned out quickly, especially at the beginning of all this with everything happening.
in hospitals and, even in outpatient practices. And so it was an opportunity for them to create a space for for physicians to call in and really get some support from other physicians who have kind of gone through the same experience. And so, yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of 2 months in, and there are 500 volunteers, and I'll give you the information if you guys want it. But Mona Masood, who's the person that started this group, this is her baby, and she's on it all the time. She's constantly finding ways to incorporate more people. So I'm pretty, it's really amazing to be a part of that.
Is it nationwide or here in?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
It's we're open till 3 a.m. Eastern time, which is like midnight Pacific time. So it's like 8 a.m. to 3 a.m. And different people take shifts. So mine are always after hours because I can do that when the kids go to bed. And some nights are really busy and some nights are not quite so busy, but it's hard to hear colleagues and fellow parents going through such a hard time.
Oh my gosh, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
That's so I'm super curious. I mentioned in the beginning, and Jolene, I don't, Jolene's daughter actually graduated high school this year. In the midst of all going to, when is her graduation, Jolene?
Well, it's funny because last week I was like, or yesterday I said, Abby, what day were you supposed to actually graduate? And she was like,
it's hard to remember.
I'm such a bad mom. And she's like, I'm not sure. So I had to ask a friend of mine, and it's June 2nd.
Okay.
It's almost there.
It's been out of my mind for the past 2 months because I knew it wasn't happening, so
right.
It's like, but her last day of school, like classes, was Wednesday, or Tuesday, I think it was. And so then she's officially supposed to graduate on June 2nd. But it's so weird, because we've just been talking about it. It's like, just all that they're going through as, seniors, and that all the things they're not getting to experience that you normally, because all the, the graduation itself, but also all the parties that people have to celebrate and prom, and, just all these events that sometimes it's just, it's like hard to really connect that it's happening and that it really isn't going to happen. They're going to try to schedule it for another time, but it's just different, they're going to be in college at that point. It's just going to feel different. So, she's adjusted very well for the most part, but it's definitely weird. It's a very challenging experience for them, for sure.
So Shruti, that's kind of what I wanted to ask you too, is that, just kind of a two-part question, just your opinion on, teenagers and kids that are going through something like that, where they're graduating and maybe it's middle school into high school or kindergarten into first grade, or, something where it would have been kind of maybe not kindergarten to first grade, but, some monumental event that they're missing out on. Super curious on your opinion on that. And then also the question that I mentioned in the beginning too, which was like, as kids go into summer, like what, kind of what is your opinion on how are they going to feel? And then how, just that kind of whole subject, which is a large one. I know I'm asking you.
No, I think these are these questions are so thoughtful, and I'm so happy to hear parents thinking about this stuff and, wondering how their kids are feeling, because it really shows me that you guys are just tapped into your kids, and is so important. I guess, okay, let me think about this. So when I think about this, maybe I want to talk a little bit about how we process a situation like this. And so maybe like if you close, you don't have to close your eyes, but if you close your eyes and you thought back to when you first found out that your kid's school was closing, I think like I remember feeling a visceral sense of like, oh, like, and I knew it was coming, right? But I still felt like, oh, and you remember that feeling. There's like it's almost like a catch in your throat or like in your gut that you feel that's immediate. And I kind of want to talk about that a minute, because I think about it in the way that we process fear and anxiety, and it kind of will relate back to how we do it with kids. So when you felt that way, immediately there was like that trigger kind of like sparked a feeling in a part of your brain that's like deeper down, called the limbic system, which kind of processes emotions and expressions and threat and all of that stuff. And when that happened, you had that feeling, But what the other thing that happened is that it sent a signal to a part of your brain that sort of processes that trigger or that threat and decides whether it really is a threat, right? And so the hippocampus, this part of your brain that remembers things, is like, okay, this sucks, but I've been through hard stuff before. And your prefrontal cortex, this front part of your brain, is like, we can do this, right? We can do hard things, right? I just read Glennon Doyle, so like this, we can do hard things is like a mantra in my mind. But so we are able to do that. We were able to do that. When our kids found this out, initially there might have been like, woohoo, spring break, or, this is like going to be so great. But over time, it's really confusing. And one thing I want to talk about is that, I think I've said this before, is that a lot of times when our kids are processing all of this loss, so I'm not just talking about grad, which is a huge loss, but like, yes, parties, time with family, friends, seeing your friends just on a day-to-day basis. I have a patient who told me, I think I shared this before, it wasn't even something that I had thought of, but just picking out her clothes in the morning and getting ready for school was like a thing. It was a part of her routine that she hadn't thought of before. But a lot of times it was, she had bought a new shirt or like a new pair of jeans, and she was going to like show her friends. And that was so exciting for her. And that is such a loss in itself. We don't even realize these things that we as adults learn to take for granted because we have so much context and so much perspective because of our developmental age. Our kids don't have that because context and perspective really just comes with development. It comes with the more experience you have. And so when you're able to tell yourself, this was a really hard thing, I got through it, your child isn't able to do that. So what that's going to look like a lot of times is complaining. Like, it's going to look a lot like I'm bored. It's going to look a lot like I'm frustrated, or I'm anxious, or I'm really sad that I'm not going to have graduation this year. And it's going to be repetitive because they don't know how to process it. And I think a lot of times as parents, we're so used to putting Band-Aids on boo-boos and fixing problems. And you can't fix this, and you shouldn't, you really shouldn't. The most important thing I think for parents to do at this time is just be present, because it is the biggest gift that I think you can give your kids. And it's also the only way that they're going to figure out how to process this and become resilient in the process. And the reason is that when your child comes to you and says, I'm bored, or like, it's so unfair, I can't have graduation or prom, I hate it, I hate this so much, and you try to fix it, or you say to them, like a lot of times I think our first instinct is to say, but we're gonna, you've got to have this and this and this, and you're gonna have this, and it's gonna come back in the future, and you're gonna get to go to college in the fall, or we're gonna do some sort of like a drive-by graduation. What happens is that you're dismissing it, right? You're not doing it intentionally, you're wanting to make them feel better, but it does a couple of things. So there's you already have so many things. You should feel really glad that you are able to do these things. You should feel really glad that you do have so many toys and games that you can play with at home. The first thing that does is it shames the child, right? And it's not an intentional thing. I'm not shaming you because you did that, right? It's just a natural instinct that we have as parents. But what it does is it creates shame about their feelings. And now it's like, you're ungrateful is the unsaid message, rather than, wow, you're really going through a hard time, or you're really having a lot of feelings about this. And what that does is it pretty much destroys your connection with your child in that moment. So it leads to an inability for them to be vulnerable with you at that time, right? And when we feel shame, what we know, researchers like Brene Brown have done a ton of work on this, right? Like, what we know about shame is that it's so self-focused that in that moment, we can't even be empathetic, or we can't even show gratitude, because we're so focused on how bad we are, like how we shouldn't feel this way. Oh my gosh, I'm terrible. I shouldn't feel that way. And because we're experiencing that, because that child is experiencing that, they're not able to be empathetic or show gratitude in that moment. So what I would say is, and a lot of times what I recommend is just being there and just being able to say, yeah, I know. And not I know, but, because when you say I know, but everything that comes after the but has now negated your I know. That validation is no longer valid, right? Because you've said to them now, I get it. However, you shouldn't be feeling this way because of XYZ reason. a lot of times I'll see, like, it's kind of like if you wake up from a nap and you're still tired and you go to your partner or spouse and you're like, wow, I'm really tired. And they're like, what the hell's wrong with you? You just took a 2 hour nap. Like, I want to punch you in the face, because why would you say that to me right now? Right? Like, I'm tired. And so that's kind of how this kiddo feels when they're like, wow, I'm really sad. And you're like, yeah, but you shouldn't be sad. And, you know, wouldn't you feel that way? So part of it is just being able to, and I think it's because it makes us feel uncomfortable when they feel uncomfortable. But
We feel
really,
bad.
Yeah, and you want to fix it for them.
Yeah.
you want to fix it. And I'm there with you. So I'm telling you all this, and people are like, oh, your kids must be really well adjusted. And me, that, you know, it's definitely much harder to follow your own advice. But I think a part of it is, if we can say to them, yeah, wow, this is really hard for you. That's it. I'm here. I'm here. I'm riding through this with you. It does two things. One is that it shows them that it's okay to name our feelings, right? And own them. And that feeling, a negative feeling, doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to get past it. You know, feelings do come and go, right? And rather than avoiding those feelings, pushing them down, distracting away from them, it's good for us. It's good for us to sit through those hard feelings. And you're going to do it with them. There's nothing to do. You can't fix this. This is reality. And it's okay for them to be feeling bad about the reality that there is. And that is truly the way that we become resilient, is by going through difficult things together, right? So I mean, I think that's a huge part of what we need to do, is that, like, teach our kids that we can get through hard things, and this is how you do it. And so the second piece of that is that parents will then often say, oh, great, like, now you told me this and I feel horrible because I haven't been doing that. I've messed it up for good. Well, no, like, the most amazing part, and this is why I work with kids, is that kids, like, there are a million do-overs with kids. Every moment is a do-over, right?
True. That is so true.
It's never too late. Like, your kids love you so much from their core, and they're looking up to you, and you can change it at any point in time. It's actually, you know, a lot of people say that is the way that resilience is built, and that is the way that we repair our bonds, is by showing kids that we can be vulnerable too. So being able to really honor them and say, I'm really sorry, you know, like, I was in a really bad place earlier, or gosh, I really felt horrible, or I felt anxious about something, and I should have responded differently to you. This is what I really wanted to say. Done. I mean,
yeah,
they're ready to hear that. And it's never a bad thing to say that, because it also teaches them that they can apologize.
I can sit here and listen to you all day. This is amazing.
Right? Oh my gosh, Jolene, I was just thinking the same thing. Like, I'm just going to sit here and watch and listen and learn and become like.
But I also thought, okay, I think I'm still a kid, because I miss getting dressed and going and seeing
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, I think I probably put on this nice little blazer because I was listening to this. Tanya, Tanya, to answer your question about the summer, I think, like, this is the way that we can prepare ourselves. Yes, we can put things in place like getting a kiddie pool or Nerf guns or all of that stuff. And you're going to find lots of creative ways. I know we are. We are a creative group of people. We are going to call our friends and ask them what they're doing. We're going to figure out ways for our kids to be busy. And that's not what I need to advise you on, because you're all capable of doing that. But I think what we really need to remember is that the minute you break the news to your kids that camp is canceled for the summer, they're probably going to not feel good about it. And that feeling, even when you process it that day and be there for them, it's not going to go away. It is, for a lot of kids, it is a feeling of really deep loss, because it's a feeling of loneliness and lack of connection. And that isn't going to go away in like one day or a week. You might see it crop up later on in the summer. You might still hear them complaining about it, or it might go away for a while and come back in the form of them feeling frustrated or anxious. And like, I think the main point that I want to drive home today is that the behaviors that we're seeing in our kids at this time, whether or not they have a pre-existing mental health issue, there's a reason behind them. And that's what we really need to be looking for, right? We don't have to fix the behavior. There's always a reason behind it, whether it's loss of control or fear or whatever else there may be.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is so true. And I have to tell you, I mean, that is the one thing that I've learned that. So I have a teenager, right? She just turned 13. And I had to do that. I had to just let her feel what she was going to feel without fixing it, because that's my initial instinct, is I just wanted to fix her. I don't want her to hurt, and I don't want to, because I remember what it felt like to be a 13-year-old girl. And I can't for her. And I, it's kind of amazing. We had a moment where I was like, I know this really just sucks. To your point, Shruti, I was like, but this is where we're at. And,
Yeah.
and because she really missed school, and she really missed her friends, and she couldn't go horseback riding. And like, she's like, and she even said it to me. And the minute she verbalized it this way for me, she's like, Mom, I feel like I'm on house arrest and I haven't done anything wrong. And I was like, yeah,
Wow.
amen, sister. Amen. Amen to you. Because you're right.
I mean, what an amazing ability to communicate. That's what a gift that is.
Right.
I mean, and I think from like along those same lines, I think, the kids, like people will often say, well, that means that you're just letting them have a pity party. And it's not. I mean, I think there's something very powerful about being able to be calm and say, I'm here with you. I'm going through this with you, and I accept the way that you're feeling. It doesn't mean that you're always going to feel this way. That's the caveat. It doesn't mean that we're going to be stuck in this cycle forever. But if we can approach it with, I think Dan Siegel does a lot of work with kids, with kids and adults on like anxiety and trauma and mindfulness. And if we can approach situations that are anxiety ridden with curiosity and calm and being mindful and being present, I think that we can get through them. And that's really the way that we build that resilience up, So it's a tough time. The other thing is, I think we have to monitor our own anxiety, right? Like, we're talking a lot about our kids, and we're not talking a lot about ourselves. We just lost Tanya.
I know.
She'll probably pop back in a minute. What I was going to say was that you want me to wait, or you want me to keep going?
Go ahead.
So I was going to say that I think during this time, it's easy to get really, really hyper-focused on the kids and then lose yourself, right? And at the end of the day, they're relying on us as well, even if they're teenagers, even the older kids are. And so there's also this mismatch between what we're expecting of ourselves and expecting of our kids, and then what our capacities are, right? So that goes with summer, that goes with school right now, that goes with work for us. If you think about it, when we transitioned, and I don't know if you guys had this experience, but I think I hear this from a lot of adults, that when we transitioned to work from home, it was expected from a lot of employers that it was going to be like business as usual and no problem, right? And what happens is that the expectation is still up here, and we're somewhere down here kind of feeling like, oh wow, I'm really exhausted. I'm on Zoom calls all day. I'm having to shift myself into sort of this homeschool role, and my kids are driving me crazy, and my spouse is driving me crazy, and we're all, and so when we can't match that, we feel really stressed out. And the exact same thing happens to our kids. So when we're expecting them to do, a full day of school by themselves without any support, without the connections that they usually have, without the same structure that they usually have, and we start hearing lots of complaining, that's probably a signal to us that they're not able to meet their capacity isn't there. They're not able to meet the expectations. And it's probably a signal to us that there has to be a balance there. So how can we bring that demand down, and how can we bring their capacity up? It's usually a little bit of a dance of both.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. So amazing. Thank you so much. I know we've gone long, but it was just so good to everything you were saying. So I hope that a lot of people listen to this, because I think it's so helpful, and just good reminders, things to really keep in mind. Cause especially like you said, for older teenagers versus young, they all have it. And what we're able to process is totally different than what a child's able to process, no matter what age they may be. Cause I actually have 18, 20, and 4. So I have a big gap.
Oh, yeah.
And my 4-year-old hasn't gone to school, and she never wanted to go to school. And now all of a sudden she wants to go all the time. Why can't I go to school?
Yeah.
So it's this whole, and then not being able to explain to her, understand, like when we go out, don't touch people, don't touch anything. So It's very it's an interesting time for sure to navigate with everybody, you know.
It is. And I mean, I think we're getting a lot of messages. I think our kids are getting a lot of messages of fear, right? So that's the scary thing that's out there. And the one thing that we can do in terms of helping them through this, right? I think there's the empathizing and validating part of this. And then there's teaching them how to deal with control, right? So there's only, oh, there she is. missed all the most important pearls.
I'm so glad that you guys didn't drop off. Oh my goodness. Okay, here we go.
No, we were just talking about I think Jolene was talking about her kids, and one of her youngest is like, now I want to go to school all the time when she never wanted to go to school, and how these changes in behavior. And I was saying that we're getting a lot of these messages of fear, and you know, it turns into fear in a kiddo's brain. And so maybe another way to help is to make it about what is under our control and what isn't, right? Teaching kids what we can control and what we can't, and then problem solving based on that. Because people always say, okay, well, now I've empathized, now what do I do? Because that's not really a solution. There's not a solution, right? But this is what we can do. This is how we get through that hard time. It's not going to fix it, not going to change it, but here's what we can control, right? And I think those lessons, that part of it has to come at a separate time than the part where you're empathizing and sitting with those feelings. You know, you can't do both at the same time. You can't be like, yes, I'm with you right now, and I'm feeling these feelings, and now let's think about how we're going to go save the world. Because again, that's invalidating your original message, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's kind of like, even like sometimes when you have a fight with your spouse, like you may not need to, you know, adjust or address everything. You want to do it in a separate setting. So just kind of remember the same thing with your children, that you have to find the right times to have the conversation.
Yeah. So true. Oh my gosh. Shruti, I mean, I could all day I could do this with you, and I missed some. So I'm going to go back and like listen to it too. Thank you so much. You are just amazing. I forgot to mention a couple of things about Shruti too. Like, so she has two children who 4 and 7, right? 4 and 7. She's a runner too. Like, you're an all-around rock star. And she makes phenomenal cookies. So like, oh my gosh. Like,
hobby.
They're beautiful, your creations. Is that a little bit of like your cathartic moments? Like when you bake?
Yeah. And I think, you know, it's interesting that you mentioned that. So I would say, like, during this time, I haven't been doing as much of that. And I think, you know, I do it a lot with my kids. And for me, the cookies that I decorate are like, I do it after the kids go to bed, and it's sort of my release, you know. And I found that at times I'm pretty wiped, right? I think you were saying this earlier. We're all really tired. We're on this platform all day, and people are asking me, why am I so tired? I'm just sitting at my house all day. But that's why you're on this heightened state. We were talking, Jolene, before you came on, or maybe you were on, about how, like, when you're on Zoom all day, you're like and doing this all the time. You know, you're just seeing yourself, and it's tiring. And so I've scaled back a little bit on how I'm being creative. And I think that's an important thing to remember too, right? Is that during this time, it's really easy to get onto social media and see 15 people with, you know, that are baking bread and doing cookies and running virtual 5Ks. And it's easy to do the comparison game. And really, it's just like reality. We don't have to do that. You do you, and do what's right for you at any given time. And that means if you're a cookier and you feel like taking a break from that for, you know, the coronavirus extent period, then that's what you do.
Yeah.
That can be really damaging too. Yeah.
Very good point. You know, you mentioned earlier about the sourdough starter thing. I saw that on Instagram, and I'm like, I have no desire to do that. I would never do it.
I hear it's really easy, so I do want to try it. I just haven't gotten around to doing it.
Oh, I'm going to go check that out.
There was one, I don't know if it's sourdough, but it was someone that was starting a bread, and they had to feed it every day for like 7
or 8. It's a pet.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, I have enough going on. I am not feeding bread.
Oh my God. See, to each their own.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly. So Shruti, we wrap up every one of our interviews with asking about, and we kind of talked along the way, but your binging questions. So is there, when you have a moment, just to kind of unwind and stuff, is there a show or a movie or a book? You mentioned
Oh
a
my
couple
gosh,
books that you're watching?
These are all my guilty pleasures, shows,
Yes.
movies. We even tie them into chores so that we get our chores done. Like we watch a particular show, it's called folding night, and we fold our laundry and we watch a show. Yeah, it's a thing at our house.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, and oh my gosh, I could go on for hours about that. But I think our favorite binge shows right now. Well, okay, I'm really late on the boat, so I do this late night. My husband's already seen the whole series, but I'm watching Breaking Bad. Sorry, guys that are Breaking Bad fans. I'm really late to the game. But we're watching Schitt's Creek, which is so funny. But you kind of have to like that kind of humor. We're watching Unorthodox. I don't know if you've seen that on Netflix. It's really interesting. It's very thought provoking. And we started watching a show that a colleague and really close friend of mine, she recommended. It's called Upload. It's on Amazon Prime. It's really interesting. It's a really interesting premise. It's like basically when you die, you upload yourself to this like virtual, almost like a retirement community. And so it's an interesting story. It's supposed to be very compelling and like sweet and funny all at once. So we're really enjoying that. And then in terms of books, I just finished Little Fires Everywhere, which is great. And I just finished.
Are you going to watch the series?
Yeah, I probably will. Yeah. I really enjoyed that. And before that, I had read Where the Crawdads Sing, which was like one of my all-time favorite books of all time. I'm a big reader. And I also finished Glennon Doyle's new book, Untamed, which is, it's a read. And I probably highlighted like 95% of the book, but it's good. It's a really good book.
I have heard so many good things about Untamed. In fact, I listened to a podcast with Brene Brown and Glennon Doyle about Untamed a couple weeks ago.
Cool. Yeah.
I haven't heard of this. I'm gonna have to go check it out. I haven't heard.
It's good. And then I was gonna tell you, Jolene, I don't know if you know about this, but they have these commencement podcasts. They're like little snippets from different celebrities and people like noteworthy people that are doing commencement speeches for people that are graduating. That's I don't know if any of your kids play soccer, but they had the Abby Wambach one. And she was so adorable and compelling and sweet. I loved it. I just listened to it because it was really cute and it was so inspiring. So I think a lot of times our kids need to hear those people too, right? Like outside of our little community, they need to hear other people saying, yeah, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this.
Right. Yes.
I think it's on, I feel like it's through iHeartRadio. They have these commencement speeches from different people.
Okay. All right. I'll have to check it out.
Anyway, see, I talk too much.
I know. And I told you, I was like, I promise this is only going to be like 30 minutes. And I know.
I'm like,
all right. So promise, last question.
Yeah.
What is like your favorite, or Jolene, do you want to do this one?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. What is your favorite like binge food that and it doesn't necessarily have to be a sweet, like we've heard so many different answers to this question. That's been fun for us in terms of what things are you eating that are like, you just have to have it all the time.
Yeah, I know this is like, my poor person in college, roots coming back. But like before, like people were stocking up on toilet paper when all of this happened. And I was stocking up on ramen because that is like my guilty pleasure. And so we've limited it's so embarrassing. It's like we've limited ourselves. We've limited ourselves to twice a week because like it's enough sodium to, I don't even know, like I'll go into like sort of hypernutremic shock, but like it's so bad for you. But oh my God, I love it.
Yes, I'm with you. We love ramen here too. And
I don't know if I've ever had it.
What? And I don't even doctor mine. No, like there's
but it's not anything I've ever been interested in.
Well, ramen's become very sexy now. Like people put lots of cool stuff. No, we are like original OG nothing in it. It's like the soup and the noodles. Like I don't even need to. Maybe I'll add some shiitake mushrooms here and there, but no, nothing added. Which I'm just
Oh my gosh! So Jolene and I go to Mosaic. Mosaic District quite a bit. Sometimes we'll meet for breakfast. Jolene, there's a ramen place there. We've got to go there next time.
Oh, okay.
Because
there is a ramen place. Yeah, I haven't been there.
Yes, we love ramen. And in fact, like, so what we make ramen here, although we should do the instant ramen because that is equally delicious as I spill my coffee on myself. Boy, it's been a good morning.
You make your own ramen?
Yeah, it's really good. Because we love, like, our favorite part is the egg. And so my girls and I, so basically we just make it so we can put egg in chicken noodle broth and noodles, or put it in the broth with the noodles and stuff, which sounds, it's just so good. But I also started making these Japanese pancakes, which are also my favorite. I can't, they're green something or other. They're so good. So good. So good.
Great. Now I'm going to eat those. Thanks a lot.
I know.
All right. Well, finish up. All right. Well, thank you so much. It was great to meet you, and thank you for all
my pleasure.
Information. It was incredible.
Yeah, this was. Thank you again.
Thanks for making it so fun for me.
No, we appreciate your time, especially on your day off. See, there's my little nugget.
Any day, anytime.
All right. Well, until next time, we'll see you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.